these are the people who I want to appeal to. Make those little slips. It happens. You have to have a plan. Ability to manage your problems effectively. How are you going to do it? Fall off the horse? Jump right back on.
And welcome. We're venturing off into our second segment. One of my favorite persons right here in front of me. My goodness. It's actually time to brook it down with Jenny. It's always nice to see you, Jenny. I want to wish you a very beautiful morning. Very beautiful Friday, actually.
Very beautiful Friday to you too. Good morning, Belize.
You touch so many lives of Belizeans. You touch us in many ways. Listening to you, the way you speak, and the things that you say. It actually boils down to great actually for families. So we're looking forward to this segment today. Over the past few days, Belizeans have been up in arms about a situation that occurred on Sunday, whereby one Kelvin Usher was actually missing for a few days.
I know.
It put the country in an uproar, especially the younger generation.
Right.
And that's to tell you that we are together to a certain extent. We are together. But the thing about it, though, because of him being missing for those days, families, the entire country, we were in grief, especially because of the way that it took place. Grief happens every day in families, every day across this country. But many a times families don't know how to deal with it. And this is where you come in.
Well, I was watching the events on the television and I was heartbroken myself, I think everybody in this country was. But the thing is, a lot of families with the shootings and with the number of traffic accidents that we have, where people are in a constant state of grief. And we've talked about grief previously on the show. But what I wanted to do was to talk to people about channeling that grief into other positive things. Because see, remember in the stages of grieving, there are 5 stages. And if you look at the young people, they were in stage 3, which is anger.
Wow.
Yeah, and so channeling that anger into things that are very positive and pointed, and making changes that we need to have made, right? So if you want, we can go through. I usually have 10 slides.
I know, and I'm actually looking forward to them because it's very important.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, though, is how do we turn grief into a positive action?
Oh, well, I want to take the anger out of the grief.
All right.
And say make it positive. For example, with the karaoke show, we had people using social media more as a bullying pulpit. Using social media then instead to be more positive and garnering the young people, getting them together to do more positive things with that anger, channeling it. For example, possibly using social media to get them together to do maybe letter writing campaigns, to have things changed. I heard the Prime Minister saying that he was going to be looking into how GSU operates. So something came of it. That was something positive that came out of it, right? And that's what I'm talking about, is channeling all that energy into doing something, getting things that are positive completed and done. No?
And I like the fact that you mentioned it, because folks would not have been able to see it from the light that you're actually shedding it, whereby from the mere fact that something came out of it, we're actually getting something positive. Whereby now the Prime Minister is actually getting to see how, better ways to help the GSU work.
Well, the thing is, the way how people reacted says that there's something wrong with the way the GSU and the public relate. And so, yes, it needs to be evaluated, and how then do we move forward? And so this has been a catalyst. All that angst has really been a catalyst to getting something different. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today.
All right, so let's jump into it.
Yes. So if you notice, we have a bird up here. It says, if you really want to be positive, nobody can stop you. And really and truly, that's what I'm hoping that as a country we learn to look more to the positive rather than to the negative. Because we affirm negative. If we talk negative, we do negative, we're affirming negative. And the whole idea is to affirm positive as much as possible.
So you mentioned in the first part there, if you want to be positive, nobody can stop you.
Right.
Let me throw something in on this particular point, whereby it seems for a lot of folks that negative, which is basically drama, is what sells. Now, watching TV, if there's no drama, it becomes to a certain extent boring. The generations now are actually with that mentality. And so therefore, a lot of folks would tend to stick to the negative because it provides that oomph that they want. So if you want to be positive, nobody can stop you. Can you shed some light on this?
Well, the thing is, I think that we have to start. In the media, for example, we have to promote that people look more at the positive things. And as we share that, because seriously, when people see the positive that came out of this, something good should come out of this, because the Prime Minister is interested now. And the kids can see that getting together, collaborating, and doing it positively. They didn't riot, they didn't tear up anything, they didn't go into the negative, right? They kept it very high energy, positive, and they went searching for the young man. That was very positive. Something good came out of it. And this is what we want to promote, is that we continue to do that kind of thing so that we get healthy actions, healthy results. Yes?
Yes, of course, healthy results. And the greatest thing about it, though, is that we had people from all walks of this country, all part of this country, who wanted to be a part of it, which, of course, then again boils down to the same word, positive.
Positively.
All right. And so do we move on?
Well, so I wanted to talk about death being a part of living. See, we're talking about grieving, all right? And I think people we kind of get caught up with being afraid of dying. We're all going there. At some point, we're all going to go there because death is a part of the process of life, right? Where do we learn about death, though? We learn about death from our families, in church, things we see in the media. I have a list of things here, superstitions, religious beliefs. Depending upon our superstitions, people are afraid of dying, right? And so this whole idea that of telling people that we all are going to go there at some point, we're all going to die. And so it's about how do we prepare ourselves then? Because we don't know. The Bible says that we don't know when. Nothing's promised to any of us. So we have to live our lives in a loving way, loving people each day and treating people the way we would love to be treated, because we don't know if we're going to see them again when we leave them.
I love that you say that, because we've all been taught, especially my generation, being in school, you love each other as you love yourself. But death still comes across as a negative to a lot of people, and they tend to not know how to deal with it.
That's what we're going to talk about. So, what are some ways that people deny that death is a part of everyone's life? You know, people don't want to make wills. You know, most people are afraid of making a will. If I make one will, that means I had a plan for dead. And as soon as the will written, I want dead. You ever hear people talk like that?
I've heard it. We've heard it all the time. Yes.
Or the other one they say is, I am not. I don't want to say the word death. You pass away. You're gone on a better place. You ever hear people talk about, oh, you're dead? People don't say that. We have all these euphemisms for death. I put them all here, you know, passed on, kicked the bucket. We saw all kinds of things that we say, but we do not say he died.
Pushing up the daisies. Cracked it. No longer with us.
It's a whole bunch of things that people do not want to do to address death, right? So the other things, they don't want to make arrangements. You know, like I always, whenever I do workshops on stress, sometimes what I'll do is I ask people to write a eulogy, their eulogy. I'm like, eulogy? Why wouldn't you want to write your own eulogy? Why would you want somebody else to write that for you? You can talk about yourself in the manner in which you want to be, remembered, right? And so I have a eulogy at the end of this for people to think about writing, because we really have to come to the place where we face what ultimately will happen to us. We're all going to die. That's the reality. We're going to die.
And I think that when people face reality, and when you know, especially when you put these things to mind, you put these things to reality, I think then you get a better understanding of life. And then again, you actually let down and say, you know what, it is true. And you move about your daily life with a better thought of your own self, which is positive. Because that's the road that we're going down. And then we move on to?
So we're talking about grief, right? And grief, the pain, discomfort, mental and physical feeling that most people feel following the death of a loved one. Now, I'm not talking about the trauma when somebody shoots your loved one, or they do something to your loved one, or your loved one disappears and they were last person they were seen with, they don't know anything about the person. That's trauma. Somebody gets killed in a traffic accident, that's trauma, right? And yes, that's going to affect the family differently. But if you have someone who died of natural causes, you've had time to prepare, you know that this is coming, you can say your goodbyes and do all these things. But yes, there is a feeling of loss. And whenever we lose anything, let's face it, whenever we lose anything, you lose a handbag, you lose a ring, you lose anything, you grieve.
In some way or fashion, you grieve.
Yeah, you do. And that's normal. And I want people to understand that that is very, very normal, okay? But there are 5 stages that people go through. The first general, sometimes people don't go there first. So it's not sequential. Okay, but the first one, and this is by Kubler-Ross, the lady who worked with a lot of cancer patients, right? And she said that the first thing she saw with her cancer patients was the denial. You know, the family does not want to accept that this person has cancer and that they're in stage 4 cancer, they're going to die. And so you need to start making preparations, start talking to your loved one, letting them know, you know, how much you love them, you care about them, that kind of thing. People are afraid to do that. They don't want to deal with it, and so they avoid. We don't want to talk with her about dying because she'll die quicker or whatever. You have all this time that you can prepare to say goodbye, love the person, show them all the love you can, but we avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we call the denial, right? We refuse to believe that this person is dying or that they have died. We mentally tell ourselves things like life is the same as it was before the loss. And so we're denying it. We don't want to deal with it. In this stage, people feel numb. They literally, like they can't even feel things, right? And so they keep denying, all right? Now, sometimes people don't go into that stage right away. They go into anger, they get angry. So please remember, this is not sequential, all right? The second part is the bargaining. So I find out that, let's say I find out that someone in my family has stage 4 cancer, right? Well, right away the bargaining starts. People go to church and they start praying, oh my God, please let this not be true. And so it's bargaining with God. Or you might go bargain with the doctor. Doctor, you need to give my mother, give her more medicine, do whatever, right? The bargaining. And so the bargaining generally follows the shock of hearing this diagnosis, or the shock of hearing that this person had died, passed away. The bargaining starts right away. Bargaining also starts, say, for example, in a child who is failing. They're going to school, and here they are, they're supposed to go into 4th form, and they fail 3rd form. And they go to the teacher, teacher, what can I do? What do I need to do? Well, you had all year to do something.
Yeah.
So no, you're going to repeat 3rd form. And they're bargaining with the teacher, what if I do all the work? Would you let me pass into 4th form? That's bargaining. So I want you and the public
so bargaining actually happens in the late stages now. You're actually en route to failure, or you're actually en route to death. And this is when the bargaining part starts. Now, is this a bad thing or a good thing to bargain?
It's not. It's a normal part of the grieving process, right? Bargaining would be what Kubler-Ross calls stage 2, right? And then people go into what's called anger. The teacher or the principal says, no, you have to go back into 3rd form. Or no, she has stage 4 cancer, she has 2 weeks to live. People get really angry. You hear them on the radio, for example, they're railing up about the hospital, they're railing about the nurses, they're railing about people. And you hear people in the mornings, and I feel so sorry for them because they are in that stage of anger. it's the anger which is a part of the grieving process that you're hearing. And the anger has two parts. The first part is the anger that goes outwards at other people. I'm really angry at these doctors, I'm angry at these nurses because they didn't do it. Why didn't they find this out earlier so she would have had a chance or whatever? Or like in the case of this young man, the students were really angry.
They were angry.
They were very, very angry because they all thought that something else had gone down that really turns out hadn't gone down. But there was all that angst, right? And that comes from, that's the anger out. Now, if they had found this young man dead, the anger then would have gone inward. This is when people start blaming themselves. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, I should have done this. We should have talked to him. We should have told him not to run. We should have, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So the second part of that anger is the anger when it turns inward. When people take responsibility, sometimes for things that they had no control over, all right? So in that anger stage, we really want to make sure that people don't turn it inwards, because then they tend to go into the next
stage.
The next stage, which is depression. And that one is really dangerous because sometimes people get into the depression and they're there for a long time, and the people around them don't notice because they're all grieving. In the family, everybody's grieving. So people tend to not notice that someone is in the depression.
And this is when I would think that this is when things get drastic, because in a situation like them falling into depression, especially following death or following failing a level of school, depression actually could live with them for the rest of their lives afterwards.
For a long time. Well, it doesn't have to be for the rest of their lives, because somebody will notice. Maybe at school they'll notice. But we want families to be able to recognize when their people are in depression, and their kids or whoever is in depression, they will appear to be sort of hopeless. Like, nothing can help me. They've lost the zest for life, right? They will be, a lot of times they don't want to get up and go to school, or they don't want to get up and go to work, but then they can't sleep. They'll go to bed, they might fall asleep for half an hour, an hour, wake up and they cannot get back to sleep.
Because it's undermined.
Well, because they're in depression, which means that the brain is not functioning the way it normally would, right? They're not eating properly either, and for some people eat a lot more, others can't eat, right? Some people sleep a lot and others cannot sleep, or they'll fall asleep and wake up and can't get back to sleep. And so the depression, they just lose the zest for life. And you can look at them, they're walking, their shoulders are hunched, they can't study, they literally cannot function.
Can't function, can't focus.
Right. And so those folks, some of them need to go see the psych nurses, go to the clinic, they need to get some medication.
But it all boils down in that particular point there to acceptance, accepting that something is wrong.
Acceptance, you can't force acceptance. What we do here in Belize, though, let me tell you what we do. We cycle between depression and anger. I get depressed, I get really just down because I miss my friend, they killed my brother in front of me, they did whatever.
I feel class or...
Right. So I'm really down. And then I get mad. The teacher had no business failing me. I should be with my friends in fourth form, or they shouldn't have killed my brother. And this is when people start doing things like wanting revenge and that kind of thing, which is why it's so important to try to ensure we get to people before the anger gets turned inward. Yeah. Right? But our people cycle between being angry and being depressed. And they don't know that you can move on and go to acceptance. Does that mean I'm accepting that somebody murdered my brother? Or am I accepting that somebody was driving so fast and they ran into my husband's car and killed him? No. I'm accepting that I no longer have this person in my life, but life has to go on because I have children, I have family. And so acceptance then brings into play the whole idea that life has to go on. Death is a part of the cycle of life.
Which is actually the final step of grief, I would imagine.
Right, it's the final step. And that's where we want people to get, to the point where they understand that life goes on. and it goes on without the person. But how do we keep the person alive? We keep that person alive by talking about them, by doing things that honor them. And I haven't seen anyone here do it, but do things like create a website where people can go put pictures, because people, you don't live in a vacuum. If something happens to you, John, all kinds of people out there know you, and all kinds of people have pictures of you. If they started a website in honor of John, people can go put all kinds of things on that website that the family would not have gotten access to. And so I haven't seen it here, but I see it a lot with people in the US, where they will do websites, or they will do different kinds of things, put together something to raise money, say for a child, because this person was a real someone who really liked helping the community, right? And so you might sponsor a child to go to high school in that person's name. And this is what I'm talking about, is turning this into positive, taking all that anger, taking all that energy, and doing something positive with it.
Turning grief into positive action.
Positive action. Going on social media and talking about what the person was like and why everybody loved that person, and putting it out there. Using social media for something very positive, right? You have any questions?
I'm actually listening, because it's very important, especially in a situation like this, whereby it happens on a daily basis and all the points are being hit, because it's important to turn that grief into a positive action.
Yeah.
And then we move on to...
Well, I wanted to go to this last slide where I said, no matter what life dishes out, remember, you are the one in charge of your attitude. And we can sit around, and I have a relative who pretty much, her husband died one day after they were married.
Wow.
And she still has everything sitting there like he's still coming home. That's become abnormal grieving, right? But we know people right here who does that, who are doing that kind of thing too. And so we really need to be compassionate, be empathetic, but try to help these folks to move on and stay in life. This is where we live right now, here in the present. We're alive. And so yes, we want to honor, we want to do things for the people who have passed, but we need to remember that we live here.
But how do we move somebody from that stage, whereby that seems to be a very difficult stage?
That's psychological help.
Okay. So how do you move this person from there to come back to the reality that, you know what, we could eventually move on?
Someone like that really needs to have medication, because she's really way out there. The grieving has become what we call abnormal grieving. Okay, so she would need to see a psychiatrist and get help. Okay. Now, the people that I guess that I am concerned about are a lot of the folks where the gun violence is affecting them, and they don't go anywhere to get any kind of counseling or any kind of help. That's trauma. And that's a different type of grieving. Because what happens is they're told, here we tell people, oh, you have to be strong, because your mommy needs you to be strong, or you need to be strong for the children. And so we want to tell people how to grieve or how not to grieve. And the entire thing is that when you have things like that happen to you, you need to grieve, because you need to have the closure.
And grieving is natural.
It's a natural thing. But people have a way, I don't know if you've heard them, man, you have to keep on stiff upper lip, you have to make sure that you hold yourself together for your picnic.
Yeah.
You can't make other people see you to cry at church, you can't do this and you can't do that. Grieving is a natural part of getting over or working through hurt and that kind of pain that they go through.
While time is not on our side, I love the fact that you mentioned that, though, Jenny, because people do say that if you grieve, you're not strong. And
that's nonsense.
How do you deal with that? What do you say to these people?
Nonsense.
Because they say, oh, if you don't cry for mommy when mommy pass, something is wrong with you. You're probably too strong, or you're not feeling like the way we feel. If you don't cry, it simply means that you don't care. And I think this is not right. There are different ways to grieve.
Everybody, I can't tell you how to grieve. I can't tell him how to grieve. People grieve differently. And I can't stand it to hear people tell people, oh, why the bowel so? That's how she's grieving. That's how she's grieving.
Yes.
Or you the grieve too long. Yeah, that don't hold like 2 weeks since this person dead. Why you still a cry? Each of us grieves differently, and we each take different time spans to get past it. And so we need to be compassionate. We need to be empathetic and let people grieve at the point where they need to.
All right. And anything else you'd like to throw in, like really quick before we?
Well, I just wanted to say real
up?
quickly, I'm challenging people out here to take time to write their eulogy. Write your own eulogy and give it to your family. Be creative though.
And what does writing your own eulogy does to it?
It gives you a sense of your mortality, and it also gives you a sense of appreciating other people who are grieving a death or grieving someone, someone who has passed on. Okay? It gives you a sense of your mortality though, and that's the important thing.
Jenny, it was nice having you as per usual. That's the way it is. This is how we broke it down with Jenny. Of course, Jenny is a mental health expert. It's always nice to sit down with her. Everybody got their own way to grieve.
Yeah.
It was wonderful sitting down with her. But coming up next, we'll be chit-chatting actually about comedy and social media. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
These are the people who I want to appeal to. Make those little slips. It happens. You have to have a plan to manage your problems effectively. How are you going to do it? Fall off the horse? Jump right back on.